Hello and welcome to Anderson Community Television. I'm Carol Donahue, your host today of a special program about vacations. Hopefully you were able to get away, maybe take a short trip here or there, and I'm sure you had a pretty good idea what would be in store for you. A couple of times my husband and I have gone on these trips and we've come home and we've said, "Phew, we survived that trip." Today's guest can sit down on that sofa and say, "Wow, did we survive that trip," and truly mean it. I welcome to our program today Dottie and Jerry Grove and friends. Welcome.
Hi, Carol. Thank you.
Hi.
So
Thank you
this vacation originally started out, it took form when you were down in South Carolina and you were going to get together with friends, correct?
Yes, we were in Hilton Head in February. We had a condo. We love to do that because we like to take the dogs to the beach. And we called friends in Estes Park, Colorado that we've been trying to get to come join us on a vacation and invited them down. Bob and Judy Taphorn. They said they had a couple of ski trips planned in February and they were going to California to see their granddaughter. But why didn't we come and visit them in Estes Park? And we talked about it and decided September was a good month to do that.
A perfect time to go.
It's
Yes.
not too hot, the kids are back in school, It's quiet, it's peaceful.
Right, the elk are bugling then, and it's
The aspens are starting to turn.
so we called, found a small community called Glen Haven, found a cabin in the mountains close to Glen Haven, and that February, the same month, called Bob and Judy and said, "We like the looks of this place that we found on VRBO, Vacation Rental by Owner, so would they go out and check it out for us?" They did so, although they couldn't get their car up. They said there were 18 inches of snow going up to the cabin, but they said it looked secluded. It had everything that we had said we wanted, so we called the owners and said, "We'll take it for the second week in September."
Wonderful. Now, at that point, you would never leave 2 or 3 of your best friends at home. Well, you had to leave one. So would you introduce your friends to us?
Yes. This is Suka Kai, which means fast dog, but he really isn't. This is Sky, whose full name is Skyuka, and he's 7, Suka is 4, and Dottie's little dog Harper is 1.5.
She was only 5 months old when we were going, 5 or 6 months old, and we felt she was too young to expect to do a cross-country trip with her, so she stayed with a friend.
So then you all got in your car. This was approximately a year ago.
Right.
And you drove out west, correct?
Right.
Right.
Now, Estes Park is located where? Is that near Denver? Is that near Boulder?
It's
or-
about, it's about 40 miles north of Boulder, about 80 miles north of Denver.
I see.
It's 1,300 miles from Cincinnati. So
I see.
it took us it took us a little more than 2 days to.
And of course, with the renting it the way you did, you were able to see the inside pictures of the property, the outside. You saw the seclusion. That is
Right.
really what you wanted.
And it was dog-friendly.
And it was dog friendly, correct. So as you approached, and you were anticipating that the nights would be cool and the days a little maybe crisp, not as hot as here.
We're former backpackers out west,
All right, so you knew.
so we're pretty much in a lot of trips in the summer out west. We rarely missed a summer going out for a trip until we got just a little more mature.
I see. So you pulled into the cabin what on a Wednesday or Tuesday, or what day of the week was it?
It was probably Saturday.
Saturday.
Saturday was our check-in date. We stayed at one of the motels by the Denver airport because there was a La Quinta that was dog-friendly there, and then the next day drove maybe 100 miles further up to Glen Haven and
And
checked in.
When did it actually? What was the weather like when you got there? I mean, was it pleasant?
Oh,
It was
sunny,
pleasant.
Sunny.
clear.
Yeah, we had, I think it started raining on Tuesday probably, but
So you had a
We-
few nice days.
We had a few nice days. Unfortunately, I had picked up some kind of virus, so I wasn't feeling real well the first 3 or 4 days. So we did go out to dinner with Bob and Judy, and we did do a little bit of exploring around the town of Glen Haven and other areas. But most of our big activities we'd planned for later in the week, taking the dogs into Rocky Mountain National Park and doing a few other things.
I wanted to go to Boulder, go to Tea Company and things like that. We had an agenda
Yeah, you did. So it started to rain then a few days
on Tuesday.
on Tuesday. Now you had radio, you had cell phones, you could communicate.
We had a landline the cell phone didn't work very well on the mountain because the towers were in Estes Park and you got very little reception. But we had a landline, we had cable TV, and we were watching the flooding in Boulder thinking, wow, isn't that terrible? Look at that, all downtown Boulder. And we didn't think anything about the flood until Wednesday morning at 5:30 a.m.
And what happened then?
We got a code red call telling us that the area was flooded, bridges and roads were out, there was dangerous debris in the roadways, wires down. Do not go out unless it's an emergency.
Now, there was a neighbor that was not too awfully far away, correct?
We had a couple of neighbors that weren't too far. The owner of our cabin wasn't very far away from us. Plus, we had another one down the hill, not too far from us, and so we sort of combined efforts once we lost. When we first got the calls, we still had phone service and we still had electric. And Jerry uses oxygen at night, and I had a real concern. We had a concentrator that is an electric oxygen, and if we lost the electric, Jerry wouldn't have oxygen at night. So I called 911 and told them that with the situation, if we lost electric, that he would be without oxygen. So we started making our plans at that point for what the thing was going to happen.
And the elevation that we were at was about 8,100 feet. So
That made it.
there was a lot less oxygen in the air, and normally here it would not have been as big a deal, but at that elevation I was pretty concerned.
What day did your concern go to real worry? What day was that?
Well, it was probably the Wednesday when we got the call. Well, not initially when we got the call, but I'd say within 3 or 4 hours, the electricity went off, and then a little bit later, the phones went out, and our landlord and a couple of other people were coming out in the rain, walking back and forth, seeing what went on, and they had told us that the bridges were all going, that the rain was taking
Everything.
sweeping the bridges away.
Unbelievable. Now, had you gone shopping? Did you get supplies in while the weather was nice?
We stopped at the grocery store on our way in, and so we really had a fair amount of supplies, but once the electric goes, so does the refrigeration. So we were fortunate that we had a gas range, and it had an electric start on it, but you could bypass that and light it with a match. So we could make coffee and we could cook, and a lot of people were not that fortunate, so we combined efforts and we were sort of a cook kitchen.
How about water, Jerry?
Well, I was just going to say that it has a well, but the well worked on an electric pump. So when the electricity went out, it wouldn't pump water into the cabin. But our landlord, John, lived a cabin up a little bit higher than us, and he had a cistern full of water. So he rigged up a garden hose and siphoned water out of his cistern so that we had just a regular old garden hose running down into our kitchen, and we had a constant supply of water running there. So we could take sponge baths and get something to drink to make coffee and so
Exactly.
forth.
Oh my goodness.
We had another neighbor that was down the way that had a family cabin, and he was a retired Colorado State Trooper. And when he came up on Wednesday, pardon me, he indicated that he was going to spend the night in his outhouse, which was higher on the hill, on the mountain rather, because water was coming too close to his cabin. He was afraid he'd wake up being swept down the stream. So we had an extra bedroom, and we invited him to move in with us.
I would say that is great. Well, you must have been very popular. Sounds like you were
We
cooking.
kept the
and
coffee pot on all the time.
I can see you doing that, Dottie. That's great. So, when did they start discussing evacuation?
Actually, not
It was
till-
really not until Saturday.
Yeah.
And
Oh, so
this
you-
started on Wednesday. You'd ask when we really became concerned. I think probably Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening, but we didn't have enormous concerns because we had figured out pretty much how to take care of everything. And I don't think we mentioned that the fire department did respond to Dottie's call on oxygen, and they had a helicopter because all the roads coming into Glen Haven were washed out at this point. There was no way to get in the town. The fire department and the firemen were on the other side of the river, so they really couldn't get over to where we were either. But they had a National Guard helicopter drop 3 cylinders of oxygen down with the firemen, and then they rigged up a pulley going across the river. In fact, Gary, the guy
Our
that was
trooper.
staying with us, and John were able to throw a rope across the river, and they rigged up a pulley so that they could get the oxygen across.
My goodness.
And they also then sent across the 2-way radio so that we had a way to communicate at least with the firemen. But they were in such a situation that there were no phones. They had no communication either other than
satellite radio.
radios.
That was it. And that was hard for them to get through because the whole area was flooded. And actually, cell phone was totally out because the towers in Glen Estes was out also, in Glen Estes Park.
We have film footage of the raging waters. When those waters picked up, the force was incredible.
Right. Well, our cabin set up probably 20 feet higher than the level of the creek. And the creek was such that when I first saw it, you could walk across it without getting your feet wet by stepping on rocks. And I had brought my fly rod thinking I'd do some fishing, but I thought, that's too small to fish in. But by now,
Pools
it
weren't
was
big enough.
really a roaring river, knocking down trees, and you could see the bridges and the debris and so forth floating by.
Well, we have footage, I believe, of your next door neighbor, and he's trying to keep the water out, and then within a certain amount of time, the water, you can see it rushing past his property,
windows.
his
Right.
windows. That
Fact-
must have been frightening.
I'm sure it was, and that footage I think is very frightening. But just this week we got kind of, at least it was a surprise to me, Dottie on Facebook
Right.
or something. Tell.
We got an email from, that was the Grice's property, and we got an email from Doug Grice's wife. Doug is the one
Sandy,
who,
I think.
yeah, Sandy. Doug's the one who took the footage that showed his house, and it's shown a couple of times. One, the water is lower, and they have electric, and they're pumping water out, and later electric's gone, and the water is up window level. But that house did stand.
It did.
Yes, it did stand, and but Sandy would, she sent me a message on Facebook saying that she would love to see the video that Jerry put together. So we're going to make a copy and get it out to her.
Now, did her husband also come to your place also?
No, they had some. I guess they had some facilities there. They were in the lower part of the mountain. We were up that
higher.
next tier, and so we were getting the folks that were walking down. Although we got some people who came over the mountain because they heard we made coffee.
And there were some people who were backpackers who had been just out with tents and so forth that came by too.
Right.
Oh, my goodness. And how did the dogs react to this change in their environment?
They loved it
All these people.
because they had all these people coming by that could pet them, and it was secluded enough, or not really secluded, but that the neighborhood dogs would run free and loose.
Come and
And they
visit.
would come and visit, and they enjoyed all of the people that were coming by, because normally if they find someone who'll pet them, they're right there.
Well, take us back again to where it's very serious and you're getting these notifications that something has to be done.
Well, we had no communication. The raging water was so loud, that's all you could hear when you went to bed at night. And of course, we had no heat either. So you go to bed at night and it's cool, very
Was there
cool.
a fireplace?
There was a fireplace on the lower level, not on the level we were on. So we'd have to sleep on the floor in order to enjoy the fireplace. But we were comfortable because we had nice comforters and that.
Lots of blankets.
Yep, yeah, and dogs. We had dogs.
To give you one.
Yep, except one of them kind of decided to go up and keep the trooper warm. And he said, I woke up with a golden in my bed this morning.
Well, they are friendly.
But the communication was an issue because they couldn't hear us and we couldn't hear them. And even when they were using a bullhorn, initially we couldn't hear. But once we got the two-way radio, what we had, Gary and I started doing is when people would come by, we would ask them to give us their name, the location where they were staying, and who they would want communicated with. For that whole week, Jerry and I were on the national missing list because our children couldn't get in touch with
Your
us.
children must have been beside themselves. Oh,
They
my
spent a lot
goodness.
of time talking, his daughter and my three talking to each other. Have you heard? Anybody hear anything? And so the friend that our dog was staying with, we had called her that morning and told her about the flood, said don't be surprised if our phone service goes out, but we're fine, you know, our cabin's high and we'll be okay. Well, she communicated the number to the kids, and then the kids got on and started working through the fire department and the National Guard, and eventually we were able to tell them we were fine. But up until Saturday, well, it was probably Thursday and Friday, we were putting together a list of the names and contacts so the fire department could radio those in for people who were looking for those that were on the mountain. So we were sort of communication center there.
I bet you were. I bet you were.
But
So,
you were mentioning the temperatures and the no heat, and it did get down into the 40s or
Actually,
maybe
upper
the high
30s,
30s
yeah.
at night, partially because the elevation is so high, and because it was raining, there was no sun to warm
Chilly.
things up in the
Wet.
day. So but you know, it was interesting. I don't think we ever really felt, you know, threatened by anything. It was an inconvenience, and you kind of thought, when are we ever going to get out of here?
well, you're a brave man,
But-
Jerry Grove, because I saw some of that footage and I thought, oh, that would frighten me.
We decided early on that, you know, there are things that we're going to live with, but hey, we're going to treat this like an adventure, and we're going to go
Good
with that
attitude.
mindset, and we've met a lot of nice people. We met some fabulous people. And when you're faced with this kind of emergency, it really does bring out the best in people.
I think you're right.
Just, they were phenomenal.
And you'll be friends with them forever. I'm sure you have this adventure that you've shared. Mm-hmm. Wow. So the most impressive footage to me was when you were standing there and they decided to do the zip lining.
Right.
Now there was an adventure.
Well,
It was
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
It
ahead,
was a
babe.
little bit of a feeling of panic when they said, we're going to zip line you out. You have a half hour to get ready. You can bring one backpack or one small bag, and we're going to zip line you across the river.
Had you ever
And-
zip lined before?
No. But our
Wasn't on our
response,
bucket list.
our response was, we ain't going if the dogs can't go. And they assured us that, yeah, we've got a way to rig the dogs up, and we've got harnesses for dogs, so they'll be fine. But that was really, I think, our only real major concern or fright in the whole thing was we wanted to get out as a group.
Now, the dogs, you didn't give them any type of medication.
No.
They were just that relaxed.
Well, you can see how excited they are now about being on television.
Yeah, but there's not raging water going, and there's no firemen in here. So that just amazes me that I took a good look at that, and it looked like the fireman was there, and the dog was on his chest, and they were secured in, and they went zooming across that raging water.
I was surprised at that too. And the way Dottie choreographed us going across was for me to go across first, so I would be on the other side, and the dogs could see that they were coming to me when they went across. And then she would go last after all the dogs were loaded up, so they'd have one of us on each side. But as I watched them come across, their facial expressions were just the same way they looked when they were riding out in the back seat of the car. Just,
Looking.
we trust
Whatever.
you guys.
That is great. So they were there to meet you and to get you off, and then what happened to you? Was the Red Cross there?
Well, what happened partially just prior to our zip lining, we were supposed to be helicoptered out.
Oh.
What are those helicopters?
Chinook.
Oh, Chinook helicopters were in the area rescuing people off the mountains. But there was a major storm moving in again, that we were at a break in the storm there. And it was starting to get dark early because of the storm, and they decided that they canceled the Chinooks, and that if we were going to get out, we had to get out then, which is why we got that short span
That
of
30
time to get
minutes?
ready to leave. They're rescuing in segments, and they have to move on to the next area where they're rescuing. So it was go now or stay on that mountain. And when we got over, they put us in one of the ambulance because they could give Jerry oxygen in the ambulance.
It's probably nice and warm in that ambulance.
Yeah, and
too.
they had originally said that the Red Cross Center does not allow dogs, and that the dogs would be sent to a kennel. And we said, nope, not going to happen.
That was after we got up to the Red Cross Center.
Well, they said that initially, which is why they were going to keep us back there in the ambulance. And so Jerry was in the ambulance, and I went ahead. We had to go on gators, the little like golf cart
ATVs.
things, ATVs, and in many places there was no road, so the National Guard, the sheriff's vehicles, they couldn't come down there. We had to go to them, and there were times that the ATVs were going sideways because there was no road at all left, and we had to get off the ATVs and walk while the ATVs so that they wouldn't turn over, and then get back on when there was enough of the road. Then we all got up to where the National Guard and the sheriff was stationed there waiting for us.
Well, how long of a trip was that then?
It was about 5 miles.
Yeah, about 5 miles. It probably took us at least 20, 30 minutes to do it
And that
because
was
of that.
probably the scariest, most uncomfortable part of the whole trip, because it was kind of still pouring down rain. It was quite cold. They were open vehicles, so I was just riding behind the driver with my arms holding onto him. It was like riding behind a motorcycle driver. And in kind of a pouring rain. And then they had a little, on the ATV that we were on, there was a little basket thing in the back, and the basket thing was big enough that these two guys and Gary Pike, the retired trooper, were able to get in the back of it and
He
take
held
us
on
on
to
up
the
the mountain.
dogs.
But it was about, we were about 8 miles from Estes Park, 8 or 9 miles from Estes Park, and there's a thing called Devil's Gulch, which is Devil's Gulch is the name of the road, but a couple of very, very steep
Switchbacks.
And just beyond that is where the automobiles from the National Guard or the state troopers were waiting, and
They couldn't have large vehicles because in so many portions of the roadway, the pavement was so narrow.
or was gone
Yeah,
altogether.
and when we
you can see in
went
some of the
sideways,
video.
when we're walking, we're trudging through the floodwater and mud. It just is sucking you down as you're walking along. In fact, I came home with pleurisy and pneumonia.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sure that was an issue. And how about the dogs? They
They
must
didn't have to
sunk.
get out. They let them
Oh,
stay.
they let them stay in?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, my
Jerry and the dogs got to stay.
So you didn't meet up with your friends when you got to Estes Park?
There was still no phone service.
I see. So they didn't know exactly what was going
But
on.
the phones went on. There was cell phone service. I got bars on my phone about, we went from when the vehicles took us into Estes Park, we went to the Red Cross Center. And because the dogs weren't allowed in, we sat in an outside corridor. And actually an AP reporter came because she had heard about our dogs being ziplined and that we had video of it. And so she looked us up and interviewed us and took our video. And we actually the dogs got a lot of national coverage.
Yeah, we have some celebrities here.
Yep,
Look, they're
yep.
very bored with their.
They said, we've been through it.
Yeah, well, no big deal. Wow. So then, where did you go from there?
Well, they found a pet-friendly motel called Coyote Mountain.
Yeah, Coyote Mountain Lodge.
Okay.
And you had asked about Bob and Judy. They were frantically trying to get in touch with us all week because they obviously, in Estes Park, knew of all of the damage and destruction. And they had lost their furnace, as most of their place was flooded too. Much of Estes Park was flooded. But it was Sunday morning before cell phones finally worked, because there was so much cell phone traffic that I guess all the cell phones
Once
crashed as well.
The cell went up, the tower went back up.
And we got a call from them Sunday morning when we were at the motel, or you called them, I can't
No,
remember
they called
which.
us. They called us.
And she was just so happy to hear that we were
Safe.
safe.
Yeah.
So then, what happened?
Well, they came over and got us and fixed dinner for us on Sunday, and we went out to shop for a few groceries like bottled water and dog food, and the shelves are practically empty because the trucks can't get over in. So we got a few necessities and contacted all of our family members to let people know that we were indeed, when they told us that they had put us on the national missing list, missing persons list, we said, well, you can take us off now because we're found.
We're lost, but now been found.
But we felt like, it was a big step when we got into Estes Park and our friends and so forth, but Estes Park was still cut off because Highway 34 and Highway 36, which are the two main arteries into Estes Park, were closed, almost destroyed, both of them. There were a series of roads that you could use to get back down to Denver that eventually we called, and we were only able to find one car rental place in Denver where we could get a rental car, because I don't think we had mentioned that we had to leave Dottie's car, obviously,
Up there.
On the mountain.
parked on the mountain. And they were telling us at that time that it would be 6 months to a year probably before they had the bridges that we could come back out and get her car. But we were able to find one dealership and one Hertz agency in Denver that we could rent a car. So we took, Bob took us there, and it took going on a crazy network of highways about 4 hours or 5 hours to do what would normally have been about a 50-minute drive. But he got us there, and we had one little problem that probably shouldn't say on TV, but rental cars won't rent you a car if you have dogs. So we had gotten, Dottie had given, or Judy Taphorn had given us one of her old sheets, and Dottie and Bob and the dogs stayed in his car. I went in, rented the car. They waited at a Starbucks up the street. We got the car, went up, covered it up very nicely so there'd be no problem with dog hair, and we were able to start back.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
That was the only alternative.
Yes.
We struggled to try to think of an alternative, and there was none.
There was none. Oh my. So you must have been, so you had rented the cabin for what, 2 weeks?
Just for a week.
Oh, just for a
Yeah,
week.
Yeah. We were spending a couple of days going out, and on the way out, we spent the night at my brother's house, who lives in Missouri. And we had not visited them since they had built a new home there. So we were happy to spend the evening with them. We didn't know that we would be calling them saying, we're coming back through, and we have the clothes on our back that we've been wearing 4 or 5 days. And how much hospitality do we have left there? They said, we have washer, dryer, everything. Come on.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So your children must have been thrilled to death. And then when you came back, one of the local television stations did a really nice interview.
Yes.
Channel 9.
Yeah.
I was actually in bed with 101 fever, and Jerry comes in and wakes me up. I was sleeping. He said, Dottie, Channel 9 will be here in an hour to interview us. And I said, cancel them. I can't get up. And he said, well, honey, we really need to get this over with and do it because it will let people know we're fine and we're back and that. So I got up, but during the interview, you could see my eyes are glassy. And I have these extraordinarily pink cheeks. And my kids said, you know, you are awfully red in your face, Mom.
A little fever going on here.
But we got through it fine.
My goodness. So you did get home and say, it's good to be back.
And we're going to go again.
Well, let me ask you about retrieving what you had to leave behind.
Well, everything was left in my car. What we didn't have a chance to put together, John Mills, one of the owners, finished putting stuff in the car for us. And then my son and I flew out the end of October. We got a call.
It was about 2.5 months, yeah.
Yeah, we got a call saying they have a temporary bridge built for the utility service. If you're going to get here before winter sets in, you're going to have to come now. So we flew out on a Monday morning. Our flight left like at 7 o'clock. And we got off the plane, and our owner, and well, there's a brother and sister who owns it, they had gotten our car off the mountain, had driven our car to the airport to pick us up.
How nice was that?
And then we dropped them at Sue Mills is the other owner. We dropped them at her daughter's house. But in the back seat of the car, they put a bag of apples for us. They put snack chips and things for us for our trip home because they knew we were going to immediately head out. So Jamie and I got in the car and we headed back to Missouri and called my brother and said, we're on our way. And he said, well, the door will be open, doesn't matter what time you get here. And we actually pulled into Cincinnati on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock.
Really?
Yep.
What a trip. So I heard Jerry mention you're going to go back.
We are looking at doing that. We had thought about doing it for this year, but I think we're going to look more so at a trip next year, possibly, staying in the same cabin with the same cast of characters, hopefully.
Now, when it was all over, was there a lot of damage done to the cabin?
There was no damage done to this cabin. It's set up high enough that it was the ones that set right beside the creek. This one, as I say, was up maybe 20 feet above the creek, so you could see everything going on, and they lost a portion of what I guess you'd call their yard, or the woods going down to the
And was
creek
that your
cut
deck
away.
or your neighbor's deck where it looked like the water was going right close by?
That was the neighbor's deck.
Deck.
That was the Grices,
The
the
Grices.
people that.
And there's some, towards the end of it, there's some of the decking around we had decking on 3 sides of our cabin, and it was covered. So with the rain, we could still go out and watch the water rushing and watching the soil eating away, and we had 2 or 3 trees that were totally swept into the stream and creating a new channel in the stream below.
Well, the weather is just such a powerful thing, and on the news lately, the last few months, there's the flooding back east and in Arizona. I guess the sandy soil can't hold it. And I guess this was pretty rocky, wasn't it, where you were?
Yeah, rocky, a lot of rocks, but a lot of trees too. It was kind of heavily forested.
I see.
But another part of the story, John Mills, our landlord, and he actually spent 20 years building this cabin. It was really a neat cabin, but he was truly a mountain man. Had a scraggly beard, very colorful, you might say, but just a absolutely tremendous guy. But he was deeply saddened because he had lost his whole supply, a heating supply of firewood for the winter. It was down closer to the creek where he had it all stacked so that he could bring it up the road as he needed it, and everything was swept away, and he had to start all over again, which spoke to his sister a couple days ago, actually last night, and she said that there were enough downed trees in the town and around the town and so forth that he was able to take his chainsaw and cut up enough wood to get through the winter without any trouble. But she says he still complains that was the best stack of firewood he had ever had, and he lost it in the flood.
Oh, that's,
And he stayed on the mountain.
he did not come on the zip line.
Nope. He wanted to ride the zip line, but they said if he wasn't leaving, he couldn't ride the zip line. And he said he wasn't leaving, that, somebody had to stay there. And when we were looking at accounts online from some of the news reports, concern for looters, everyone had armed themselves. The store owners and people there were, the ones that were left or came back were going around all armed.
Yeah, that was one of the things that Sue said last night. I'd asked her about how the recovery had gone, and she said, well, looters were the biggest problem initially. Red Cross people came in, and then other people would come in acting like they were Red Cross, but they really wanted to find the empty cabins that people had deserted and loot. And so for a period of time, almost everyone was armed and walked around armed all the time. And she said her brother had 2 or 3 run-ins with people that he didn't trust or that he thought were potentially looters. But she said the second problem they had with the cabins that weren't occupied was that bears were getting into them. Said there were a number of cabins that bears had gotten into because of food and I guess difficulty in finding.
Things we would never think of.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
But on the one night, I don't know, Wednesday night or Thursday night, John had his
Thursday.
garbage, a bag of garbage ready to go down and to wherever they take their garbage, and a bear had gotten into it and just tore it, and all over the road was just trash.
It was in a shed that was padlocked, and the bear broke into it.
Were you concerned at all about your pets with?
I wasn't smart enough to be. I didn't realize that bears, and normally, bears don't really bother you unless you're aggravating them in some manner. And, we backpacked a lot in our youth in bear country, and normally bears don't bother you at all. But the dogs always stayed in at night when we would have a...
Did they have coyotes there?
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
do.
I'm sure they do. We did not hear
We
any.
didn't see any or hear them. We
We've-
hear more of them here.
We hear them at our house across the road in Johnson Park. They have coyotes, and we can hear them almost every night.
Well, we have them interping in the forest there. Wow. So looking back on your trip, what did you learn? What did that trip teach you?
We can handle anything.
Yes.
We really can.
Go, girl.
It is just as long as you adopt an attitude that, okay, this is just one more thing for us to get through, and we will handle it. You look for the necessities and things that you have to take care of. You take care of them, and then you just sit back. And on the one film, we made so many friends, and I was saying goodbye to them as I left, and people who watched that videotape said anyone else would have been scared out of their mind. And here's Dottie. Bye. See ya.
Well, you looked very relaxed when you were standing there by the bank getting ready to be ziplined.
Well, and you can hear on the tape too when she starts across. John, our landlord, is yelling, "Faster, faster!" He wanted to, and then you can also hear in it, if you listen closely, one of the firemen said, "Oh, I'll bet she gets her butt wet."
I did hear that because it did look like you were skimming right across the top.
Because the way the zip line is set up, it is the downward thrust that made you go across it. So it it was interesting.
But she stayed dry
She did.
I did.
She did.
I did. It was
until
just
it
my
started
feet,
pouring down rain.
and then I got really wet.
So you're going to be checking the weather forecast before you go the next time to.
We did before we went the last time.
Yep.
This was not predicted.
Nope. Nope, not at all.
Force of nature can
Not
change.
at all.
Yep. It did.
The other thing that's in terms of checking up and I spoke to the Taphorns last week, and Bob said they had just gone down to Glen Haven 2 days before that because their granddaughter was in from California and they wanted to try the cinnamon rolls that are famous in the one place
general
in Glen
store.
Haven, general store. And the general store has reopened after about 8 or 9 months, but he said that was the only business in Glen Haven that's open.
And that was all they were doing,
And-
really, was making their cinnamon rolls.
That's the only place. That and the fire department are the only two
And the
active
post office.
places, and
Yeah.
the post office.
The post office and the fire station, that was kind of an interesting story. On Tuesday, they were building this new fire station. And on Tuesday, they weren't quite ready to move, but with the flooding upriver, they decided they were going to start moving the equipment. They got about 98% of the equipment moved. Wednesday morning, there was no old fire station. It had been totally wiped out.
Oh my goodness.
The new one was fine, stood, but the old one was nothing but rubble. So they really made a good call on that one.
Oh my goodness.
But the highway, and it's Highway 43, County Road 43, I guess, that goes through Glen Haven. But looking at it on the internet at this point, and I asked Sue Mills this when I was talking to her, I said, it looks like it's just a dirt road. And she said, that's all it is. It's just the main street, the main downtown street is just dirt now. She said the roads still aren't really totally rebuilt to get into and out of Glen Haven, but you can, I guess some places are one lane still.
Well, Larimer County had some great footage of
Yes.
the destruction and whatever, so I don't know if you can go to their website and do periodic updates to see how it's changing.
Yes, that's where we picked up a lot of information. That and the Glen Haven Fire Department.
I see.
Yeah, they have a Facebook page that has a lot on it, it's a volunteer fire department, and if there's anyone that I have tremendous respect for, it's the Glen Haven Fire Department, because they were courteous, they were heroes, they helped us out, they were considerate, and they're all volunteer. They don't get paid.
And one female volunteer, Kelly, had her two young children, like about 10, 12, and they helped with the dogs. I mean, everybody was pitching in and helping. It was just amazing. Truly a venture, and a very amazing one.
And Jerry, the inn at Glen Haven?
The Glen Haven Inn is one of the nicest dining spots in Larimer County, and we had made reservations there on Friday night to take Bob and Judy to dinner, and we were really looking forward to it. But as you look at the video, it was just absolutely, totally destroyed by the flood. And you look at it, and we didn't need to call to cancel our reservations because there was nothing going on there.
The Larimer County flood reports pretty much say it all. They had a lot of footage that will tell the story of the flood.
In Larimer County, 1,120 square miles was affected by flooding. Hundreds of homes and businesses were destroyed, and hundreds more have been damaged. Extensive road damage in Big Thompson Canyon completely cut off road access to the communities of Drake, Glen Haven, and Cedar Park. 3 dams also failed in the county. Both US 36 and US 34, the major routes into the tourist town of Estes Park, were severely damaged. Hundreds of Estes Park residents were also isolated by the destruction of sections of Fish Creek Road. All 9 crossings were damaged or destroyed.
Larimer County is looking at $50 to $100 million worth of road work on our county roads. Projects like that take months, if not years, to complete.
They're bridges that have to be replaced. We know this is a process that's going to take us quite some time, and as we get to these problems, we want to make sure we handle them all, and we do it in a way that is wise and responsible. We were looking at Glen Haven, and the only word I can use to describe Glen Haven was sobering. I've never seen anything like that in my life, and walking around and seeing the buildings and just the sheer raw destruction up there, and it just underscores in my mind the need to do everything we can to help get our communities restored and rebuilt, and to reassure people that we are here for the long haul.
We're here in Glen Haven. What you see behind me is what's left of County Road 43. You can see the extensive damage. It's a countywide challenge. We have destruction like this all over Larimer County.
Well, I'll tell you, the Groves certainly have something to tell their kids about, and I'm sure you're keeping lots of photographs to pass on, and you had some fantastic footage with your cell phone also.
Yeah, we forgot our camera, so all we had was my iPhone, but it was amazing how much footage you can take, and Jerry used a lot of that in the video that he did.
Great. And the people there, I know, are going to be talking about it forever. So when you go back, you be very, very careful.
We're going to.
And your dogs, I am so impressed. Just look at this. They are so
Sky,
relaxed.
Suka, Sky,
Say hi.
can you say hi?
Well,
Sit.
now they're up.
Okay, sit, guys. Good
Sit,
boy.
okay.
Good
No.
boy. Well, he did say hi.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're beautiful animals, just gorgeous.
And they've been well behaved. We had some concerns that they might be a little excited, but just like going on the zip line, they take it in stride.
Well, so many dogs, when the weather is bad, I know they have to be medicated. Did you have a lot of thunder?
There was some,
And
but
that
they
didn't-
don't react to
They don't
storms.
react to that. Well, you're very fortunate.
No, they're dogs that do react to that. Their owners have a lot of problem. They put the thunder shirts on them and things like that.
Oh, my. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us.
Well, thank you.
And
We're happy to do so. Thank you for
And
inviting
thank-
us.
Yes, and-
Anderson Community TV.
Well,
and
you two have
Nikki.
been just anchors in this community for so long. I used to see Jerry all the time at the Beachmont Mall, and Dottie with the chamber and with real estate. So we're proud of you two.
Now I play in
Well,
traffic.
thank you.
Yes. So you take care, and thank you again. And thank you for watching Anderson Community Television. This is Carol Donahue saying farewell and keep safe.